From newlyweds posing on cliff edges for wedding photos, to couples ignoring wildlife warnings at safari camps, these honeymoons were meant to celebrate new beginnings. Instead, paradise locations became scenes of unthinkable tragedy. Here are 5 couples whose dream destinations delivered nightmares no one could have predicted. It was June 7, 2019 in Santorini, Greece. The afternoon sun illuminated the island's famous white buildings and blue-domed churches, with temperature reaching 28 degrees Celsius and light winds blowing in from the Aegean Sea. Tourist season was in full swing, with couples from around the world visiting the volcanic island's dramatic cliffside views. Sarah Mitchell, 26, had worked as a marketing coordinator in Boston before taking 2 weeks off for her honeymoon. Her college roommate later described her as organized and detail-oriented, someone who'd spent over a year planning every aspect of her wedding and honeymoon. Co-workers told investigators that Sarah had been excited about visiting Santorini specifically for its Instagram-worthy photography locations. She'd married her longtime boyfriend 3 days earlier in a ceremony attended by 200 guests. The volcanic cliffs of Santorini rise nearly 1,000 feet above sea level in some locations, formed from layers of hardened lava and ash. Geologists note that the cliff faces are inherently unstable, with erosion constantly occurring from wind, rain, and the salt air. Warning signs posted at popular viewpoints explicitly instruct visitors to stay behind barriers, but enforcement is minimal and violations common. Travel safety experts emphasize that cliff edges can collapse without warning, particularly in areas where tourists have worn paths that undermine stability. According to her husband's later statement, Sarah wanted a specific photo she'd seen in travel magazines, standing at the cliff edge with the ocean and caldera behind her, arms outstretched. The plan involved walking past the safety barrier to a rocky outcrop that extended several feet beyond the maintained viewing area. Her husband said she'd assured him it would be safe, noting that they could see other tourists' footprints on the same outcrop. He positioned himself approximately 15 feet back to frame the shot with his phone. The recording from his phone showed Sarah climbing over a low stone wall and walking carefully toward the outcrop. She tested her footing with each step, moving slowly across the rocky surface. The footage captured her reaching what appeared to be a stable position, turning to face the camera, and spreading her arms wide. She was smiling, the dramatic backdrop visible behind her. When witnesses later described hearing a cracking sound, the phone's video showed the outcrop beneath Sarah's feet, suddenly detaching from the main cliff face. The section of rock, later estimated at roughly 6 feet wide and 8 feet long, tilted forward and began falling. Sarah's expression changed instantly, the smile disappearing as she realized what was happening. She tried to jump backward toward safety, but the rock was already in motion. The recording captured her falling with the rock section, arms flailing, before the camera jerked away as her husband screamed. Multiple tourists witnessed the fall from different vantage points. They later described seeing Sarah and the rocks tumbling through the air, separating mid-fall as she struck against the cliff face. The fall covered approximately 940 feet, with Sarah's body striking rocky outcroppings at least twice during descent. Witnesses said the impacts were clearly visible even from a distance. She landed in shallow water at the cliff's base, surrounded by rocks and debris from the collapsed section. Emergency services were called immediately. The Greek Coast Guard dispatched a boat within minutes, but the location's remoteness and rocky access made reaching her difficult. Rescue personnel arrived at the site roughly 25 minutes after the fall, finding Sarah's body in approximately 4 feet of water. According to their report, death had been instantaneous. The medical examiner later determined she'd sustained catastrophic injuries incompatible with life, specifically noting massive trauma from the initial impact with the cliff face approximately 300 feet into the fall. Her husband was treated for shock and required evacuation from the viewpoint by paramedics. The Greek authorities investigated but filed no charges, ruling the death accidental. The specific outcrop where Sarah had stood was cordoned off with additional barriers and warning signs installed in Greek, English, and 3 other languages. Her family released a statement urging travelers to respect safety barriers, and several travel blogs that had featured photos from that location added warnings to their posts. The couple's travel insurance became the subject of a legal dispute when the insurer initially denied the claim, citing violation of posted safety rules, though the case was eventually settled privately. It was August 14, 2021 in Kruger National Park, South Africa. The evening was cooling after a hot day, temperature dropping to 21 degrees Celsius as the sun set over the bushveld. The private safari lodge sat within the park's boundaries, offering guests close access to wildlife while maintaining safety protocols developed over decades of operation. Michael Torres, 31, taught high school biology in Seattle and had dreamed of visiting Africa since childhood. Friends described him as adventurous and knowledgeable about animals, someone who watched nature documentaries constantly and could identify hundreds of species. His best man later told investigators that Michael had specifically chosen this honeymoon destination for the wildlife experience, spending months researching safari operators. He'd married his girlfriend of 4 years in a small ceremony 1 week earlier. African wildlife parks operate under strict safety rules, particularly regarding nighttime movement. Lions, leopards, hyenas, and other predators are primarily nocturnal, with hunting behavior peaking during darkness. Lodge operators emphasize that guests must never leave their accommodations after dark without an armed escort, as humans' scent and movement can attract dangerous animals. The lodges are unfenced by design, allowing wildlife-free movement, which means predators regularly pass through the grounds. According to his wife's statement, Michael had wanted to photograph nocturnal animals using his new camera's night mode. The couple's room was approximately 200 yards from the main lodge building where dinner was served. Lodge policy required guests to call for escort after dark, but Michael apparently believed the short distance was safe enough to walk alone. His wife said she'd urged him to call for an escort, but he'd insisted the walk would take less than 5 minutes and that he'd be careful. The plan was for him to walk to the main building, set up his camera on the veranda where lodge staff had mentioned seeing animals drink from a nearby waterhole, and return before dinner. He left their room carrying his camera and a small flashlight. The lodge's security cameras, reviewed later by investigators, showed Michael walking the path toward the main building. The footage captured him moving confidently, using the flashlight to illuminate the ground ahead. He appeared to be alone on the path, which wound through scattered acacia trees and low brush. The cameras lost sight of him as he moved beyond their range, approximately 120 yards from his starting point. What happened next was reconstructed from evidence found at the scene and testimony from lodge staff. A lioness, part of a pride that rangers had been tracking in the area, had been lying in tall grass roughly 30 feet from the path. Lions are ambush predators capable of covering short distances at speeds exceeding 50 miles per hour. The attack, according to wildlife experts who later examined the site, would have been nearly instantaneous. The lioness likely detected Michael's approach, waited until he passed, then charged from behind. Staff at the main lodge heard screaming shortly after Michael would have been midway along the path. The head ranger, armed with a rifle, immediately responded along with 2 other staff members carrying powerful spotlights. They found Michael approximately 80 yards from the main building. The lioness had dragged him roughly 40 feet off the path into heavier brush. According to the ranger's report, the lioness initially refused to abandon her prey, requiring warning shots fired into the air before she retreated into darkness. Medical staff reached Michael within minutes, but according to their statement, he'd already lost consciousness and had no pulse. The attack had focused on his neck and head, typical lion-killing behavior. The medical examiner later determined the cause of death as exsanguination from severed carotid arteries, the medical term for bleeding out from damaged major blood vessels. The initial bite had been catastrophic, causing death within approximately 2 to 3 minutes. His wife was escorted to the main building in a state of severe shock, requiring sedation and psychological care. The lodge closed temporarily while wildlife officials tracked and confirmed the lioness's location. The animal was ultimately relocated to a more remote section of the park rather than destroyed, as experts determined she'd behaved naturally given the circumstances. Michael's family pursued no legal action, releasing a statement acknowledging he'd violated clearly stated safety protocols. The lodge installed additional lighting along all pathways and implemented a new policy requiring signed acknowledgement of safety rules during check-in. Wildlife tourism organizations across Africa use the incident in updated safety briefings, emphasizing that rules exist not to limit experience, but to prevent exactly this type of tragedy. It was October 23, 2020 in Bali, Indonesia. The morning was warm and humid, around 30 degrees Celsius, with the monsoon season approaching, but not yet arrived. Kuta Beach stretched for miles, its famous surf breaks attracting both experienced surfers and casual tourists to the island's southwestern coast. Jennifer Park, 28, managed social media for a tech company in San Francisco, and had planned her honeymoon to coincide with Bali's shoulder season for better prices. Her sister later described her as confident and athletic, someone who'd grown up swimming competitively and felt comfortable in ocean conditions. Colleagues told investigators that Jennifer had been looking forward to beach time after months of wedding planning stress. She'd married her college sweetheart 2 weeks earlier in a ceremony overlooking the Pacific Ocean. Riptide currents occur when water flowing back to sea concentrates into narrow channels, creating currents that can reach speeds of 8 feet per second, faster than Olympic swimmers can maintain. Lifeguards emphasize that riptides don't pull swimmers underwater but rather away from shore, and that the correct response is to swim parallel to the beach to escape the current, rather than fighting directly against it. Warning flags and signs at popular beaches indicate current conditions, with red flags specifically prohibiting swimming. According to her husband's statement, Jennifer had wanted to swim that morning despite red flags posted at multiple beach access points. He said she'd mentioned her competitive swimming background and expressed confidence in her abilities. The plan, as he described it, was to swim out roughly 50 yards, enjoy the water for 10 to 15 minutes, then return to their beach chairs. He remained on shore, reading a book while watching her periodically. Beachgoers later told investigators they'd seen Jennifer enter the water and swim outward with strong, confident strokes. She appeared to be a skilled swimmer, moving efficiently through the surf zone. Approximately 8 minutes after entering the water, witnesses described seeing her stop swimming and begin waving her arms. Her movements appeared agitated. Her husband noticed and stood up, as did several other people on the beach. Jennifer appeared to be swimming back toward shore but making no progress. Witnesses later said it looked like she was on a treadmill, swimming hard but staying in roughly the same position. Lifeguards, who'd been monitoring the beach from a tower roughly 200 yards south, saw the situation developing and immediately responded. 2 lifeguards entered the water with rescue boards, while a third called for additional support. The recording from a tourist's phone, provided to investigators, showed Jennifer's swimming becoming increasingly desperate. Her stroke deteriorated from efficient freestyle to ineffective thrashing. She went under the surface briefly, came back up, and was clearly struggling to keep her head above water. The lifeguards were paddling toward her, perhaps 100 yards away, when she went under again and didn't immediately resurface. One lifeguard dove from his board and disappeared underwater for several seconds before surfacing with Jennifer. He got her onto the rescue board and began paddling toward shore, assisted by the second lifeguard. They reached shallow water within 2 minutes of making contact. Beach staff and bystanders helped carry Jennifer to the sand, where CPR began immediately. According to witnesses, Jennifer showed no signs of consciousness or breathing. Lifeguards performed chest compressions and rescue breathing while waiting for medical transport. An ambulance arrived approximately 12 minutes after the initial distress call, with paramedics taking over resuscitation efforts. They worked on Jennifer for nearly 30 minutes, attempting advanced life support protocols, but could not restore cardiac function. She was transported to a nearby hospital where doctors pronounced her deceased. The medical examiner determined the cause of death as drowning complicated by cardiac arrest from exhaustion. Her heart had given out from the extreme physical stress of fighting the current. Investigators later estimated she'd been caught in the riptide for approximately 11 minutes, during which time she'd burned through all energy reserves trying to swim against current moving faster than she could possibly overcome. Her husband required psychological support and was eventually flown home by family members who traveled to Bali. The local tourism board used the incident to launch a renewed water safety campaign, including multilingual signage about riptide dangers and swimming only when green flags are posted. The specific section of beach where Jennifer died received additional lifeguard coverage and permanent warning markers. Her family established a water safety foundation that has since provided training to over 3,000 swimmers in riptide escape techniques. It was March 9, 2018, in Monteverde, Costa Rica. The cloud forest morning was cool and misty, around 18 degrees Celsius, with visibility limited by low-lying fog that drifted through the jungle canopy. The zipline operation had been running tours for over 15 years, with safety inspections conducted quarterly according to Costa Rican tourism regulations. David Walsh, 34, worked as an investment banker in Chicago and had researched adventure honeymoon destinations extensively. Friends described him as athletic and competitive, someone who ran marathons and enjoyed challenging physical activities. His brother later told investigators that David had been excited about the zipline course specifically, having watched videos online of similar experiences. He'd married his girlfriend of 3 years just 4 days earlier in a small private ceremony. Zipline operations rely on precise equipment, maintenance, and proper fitting of safety harnesses. The harness system includes a primary attachment point and a backup safety line, both of which must be correctly clipped to the zipline cable. Industry standards require guides to personally verify every attachment before allowing a rider to launch. Weight limits are strictly enforced because cables have specific load ratings, and exceeding these ratings can cause equipment failure or increase speed beyond safe levels. According to the tour operator's statement, David and his wife were part of a group of 8 tourists doing the canopy tour, which included 12 separate zipline segments at various heights and lengths. The guide later told investigators that he'd fitted David's harness and checked the connections himself, following standard protocol. David weighed approximately 215 pounds, well within the equipment's rated capacity. The plan for this particular zipline, the course's longest at over 1,000 feet, required riders to launch from a platform 90 feet above the forest floor and brake manually using thick gloves on the cable as they approached the arrival platform. The guide's helmet camera, standard equipment for insurance purposes, captured David's launch. The footage showed the guide checking David's clips, giving a thumbs up, and stepping back. David sat back in his harness, lifted his feet, and pushed off the platform. For the first several seconds, everything appeared normal. David was traveling at approximately 45 miles per hour, standard speed for that segment, his body suspended below the cable in the expected position. Then, approximately 6 seconds into the ride, witnesses on both platforms later described hearing a metallic sound, variously described as a snap or ping. The helmet camera showed David suddenly dropping roughly 3 feet lower than his previous position. His primary attachment point had failed. Later investigation revealed a hairline fracture in the carabiner that had existed prior to the tour, but hadn't been detected during morning inspection. The backup safety line caught David's weight, but the sudden transfer of load caused him to swing wildly beneath the cable. The footage captured him grabbing at the backup line, trying to stabilize himself, but his momentum made control impossible. He was now traveling at increased speed because the backup attachment point positioned him at a different angle, reducing friction. Witnesses described seeing him swinging in increasingly violent pendulum motions. Approximately 2/3 of the way across the span, David swung particularly far to the right. The zipline ran between 2 platforms built around massive trees. During the rightward swing, David's body struck a tree trunk at approximately 30 miles per hour. Witnesses later said the impact sounded like someone hitting a heavy bag. The helmet camera lost its angle on David at that moment, but recorded audio of screaming from both platforms. David's body went limp after the impact, but remained attached to the cable via the backup line. Rescue protocols required guides to use a specialized trolley system to reach incapacitated riders. 2 guides reached David within 8 minutes, finding him unconscious and unresponsive. They stabilized his head and neck while being lowered to the ground via a separate rope system, a process taking approximately 15 additional minutes. Emergency medical services reached the location roughly 35 minutes after the initial incident, delayed by the remote jungle location. David showed no vital signs. Attempts at resuscitation were unsuccessful. He was transported to a medical facility where doctors confirmed death. The medical examiner determined he'd died from severe traumatic brain injury resulting from blunt force head trauma. The impact with the tree had been immediately fatal despite his helmet, which had cracked but not prevented the catastrophic injury. His wife, who'd witnessed the entire sequence from the arrival platform, required immediate psychological intervention and was hospitalized for shock. Costa Rican authorities launched an investigation that resulted in the tour operator's license being suspended pending equipment review. The fractured carabiner was traced to a manufacturing defect, leading to a recall of similar equipment across multiple tour operators. David's family filed suit against both the tour operator and equipment manufacturer, eventually settling for undisclosed terms. The specific zipline where he died was permanently closed, and Costa Rica implemented new regulations requiring daily ultrasonic testing of all zipline attachment hardware. It was December 28, 2019 in Cancun, Mexico. The night was warm and humid, around 26 degrees Celsius, with the resort district alive with holiday celebrations. The high-rise hotel hosted hundreds of guests, enjoying the week between Christmas and New Year's, with beach parties and poolside events running late into the evening. Rebecca Thompson, 25, worked as a pediatric nurse in Denver and had saved for over a year to afford the honeymoon package. Her nursing supervisor later described her as responsible and caring, someone who always prioritized others' needs and worked extra shifts to help colleagues. Friends told investigators that Rebecca had been thrilled about the all-inclusive resort experience, viewing it as a well-deserved break after months of wedding planning. She'd married her high school sweetheart 6 days earlier in her hometown church. Hotel balconies typically feature railings 42 inches high, designed to prevent accidental falls while allowing guests to enjoy views. However, railings are engineered to withstand someone leaning against them, not climbing on them or sitting on top of them. Safety experts note that alcohol consumption significantly increases balcony fall risks, as it impairs judgment about safety and physical coordination. Many resorts have banned balcony furniture that could be used as climbing aids, but enforcement varies. According to her husband's statement, the couple had been celebrating at the hotel's beach party earlier that evening and had consumed multiple alcoholic drinks. They'd returned to their 12th floor room around midnight. He said Rebecca had wanted to look at the ocean view and had gone onto the balcony while he used the bathroom. He estimated being out of the room for less than 3 minutes. What happened next was reconstructed from witness statements and physical evidence. Guests in a room 1 floor below and 3 rooms to the side reported hearing music from the Thompsons' balcony. They later told investigators they'd looked out and seen a woman, later identified as Rebecca, dancing on her balcony. One witness said she appeared to be recording herself with her phone, possibly creating a video. The witnesses described seeing Rebecca step onto a plastic chair that had been on the balcony despite hotel policy prohibiting such furniture. She appeared to be trying to get a better angle or position for whatever she was recording. She placed one foot on the chair and the other on the balcony railing itself. Witnesses said she was holding her phone in one hand while gripping the railing with the other. The chair shifted beneath her weight. Multiple witnesses reported seeing her lose balance, arms windmilling as she tried to recover stability. Her grip on the railing slipped. She fell backward off the balcony, tumbling through the air. The fall covered 12 stories, approximately 130 feet. Witnesses described her landing on the pool deck near the swimming pool's edge, the impact audible even over ambient music and party sounds. Hotel security reached her within 30 seconds, finding her unresponsive with catastrophic injuries visible. Guests near the pool had scattered, several screaming. Security immediately called for medical assistance while attempting to clear the area and establishing barriers. Resort medical staff arrived within 2 minutes, assessing her condition and beginning emergency protocols despite the obviously fatal nature of her injuries. Paramedics transported Rebecca to a trauma center, arriving roughly 20 minutes after the fall. Doctors noted extensive injuries incompatible with survival and pronounced her dead shortly after arrival. The medical examiner's report documented the cause of death as multiple blunt force trauma from the fall, with specific notation of severe traumatic brain injury, spinal fractures at multiple levels, and massive internal bleeding. Death would have been nearly instantaneous. Her husband, who'd discovered her missing when he exited the bathroom and looked over the balcony to see emergency activity below, required sedation and psychiatric care. The hotel faced multiple investigations, with authorities citing the presence of the chair as a violation of safety protocols. Management implemented immediate removal of all balcony furniture throughout the property and installed additional warning signs. Rebecca's phone was recovered and showed she'd been attempting to record a video message for friends. Mexican tourism authorities used the case to launch a balcony safety awareness campaign across resort zones. Her family requested privacy, but her nursing colleagues established a memorial fund that has since supported scholarship programs for nursing students.